Hey everybody, it's Professor Hill here. It's our last video on closing. So what is closing? It's simple. It's just getting the customer to commit to take the next step, whatever that is, right? Could be for the purchase. That's what most people think of. It's to agree to an appointment, to present a proposal, to give a demonstration, go to a customer site to talk to them, agree to a benefit. It's just getting the customer to take the next step. Closing can be stressful for salespeople. I mean, it makes sense, right? Rejection, you've spent all this time and effort, and what if they say no? And then you don't make the money that you want or that you need. You don't look good, in terms of your performance. Maybe it's going to cost you your job. You spent your time and effort on, this prospect who's not going to come through. So it's understandable that a lot of salespeople don't like closing or sometimes are reluctant to close when they should. So why should you look forward to closing? Well, first of all, you've built a relationship. You've earned the right to close. You've been working with this prospect, showing them how your product can help them solve a problem or achieve some opportunity or goal they have. All right. So you've earned that right. Remember, it's a relationship between you and the prospect to try to find a mutually beneficial solution for both of your companies. Hey, they've said they want to fix the problem. Okay. Obviously, they should want to fix that. Right. And that's why you use need payoff questions to make sure that it's something they want to fix, turn that implicit need into an explicit need, and use trial closes. If we could solve this problem for you, is it something you would go ahead with? Are you willing to invest in it? That can help you, find out whether your prospect is serious about actually making a purchase. And then, at some point in the relationship, it's a logical thing to do. Sometimes you don't get to that point, and you have to, work extra hard to get there, or it may take a long time. But at some point, you have to try to consummate the relationship. So when do you close? Well, how do you know when to ask somebody out on a date or to marry you, right? How do you know when to ask somebody for a big favor? It really comes down to buying signals. And there's a short video I'll show you, but buying signals are when the prospect, through either their language, the questions they ask, um, nonverbal communication, shows that they're really receptive, and in essence, they've said yes in their head to the sale. So here's a short video. It's not the greatest quality, but he does a good job reviewing some of the basic buying signals. You're probably getting sick of tired of listening to me talk.
Hello, I'm Wayne Berry. I'm in Adelaide right now at the Adelaide Convention Centre, where I've been speaking for one of Australia's largest banks. One of the things that we were talking about is asking the client for the business. So many salespeople talk past the point at which the client has already made the decision to go ahead. They completely miss the signals, what we call buying signals. So here's my suggestion. It indicates they have already bought in their mind. And if you recognise that, pick up on the signal, and then simply ask them to go ahead, very often what they'll do is say yes. What a lot of salespeople do, of course, is they talk way past the point at which the client has made the decision to go ahead, and in doing so, they talk the client out of the business. So some of these buying signals are the what, when, where, why, and how questions that you'll get from your client. What did you say that included again? When did you say I could have delivery of this? How would we train my staff in how to use this? Sometimes they're the verbal signals, sometimes they're non-verbal. Be alert. Watch out for those buying signals, and when you think your client has already bought, it can be as simple as saying, so why don't we take care of the paperwork? Why don't we get it wrapped up? And by the way, another little clue here is, I think it's important to tell the client that, in your opinion, it would be a real pleasure doing business with them. Hopefully you mean that. Thank them for their business in advance. Tell them it would be a pleasure doing business with them. You may be surprised. They may turn back to you and say, yeah, it'd be really good doing business with you as well. Hey, then it's time to ask for the decision. Hey, I'm Wayne Berry in Adelaide. I hope that this week is a great week for you. Make it a great week. Bye for now.
There are a lot of different closes, and you certainly need to know several different ones. You just have to be careful using them. First of all, if you're dealing with very experienced buyers, and especially in business to business, I mean, if you use a very common one, they know it's a close, and they may perceive you lack authenticity in delivering it. And the second thing is, some of them can be manipulative, and you have to be careful in using that and decide, how manipulative you want to be with your prospect, and you don't want them to perceive you as getting a sale by manipulating them. You want them to believe they're purchasing because it's in their best interest and they're making the decision. And probably one of the most important things is, don't close until the customer is ready to buy. Um, I guess back in the day, you'd hear people talk about the ABC close, always be closing. Like, it was never wrong to ask the person to buy, or always give them a trial close. If we can do this, are you willing to go ahead with it today? If we can find the right price, will you sign today? That can get annoying for the buyer. They're not ready at that stage. And more importantly, you sound like you're not interested in solving the problem. And that's what's going to get you the sale. So here's another short little video by Gittimer, who, yeah, I enjoy some of his stuff. He's pretty entertaining.
Hey, Mr. Sales Genius. Want to learn how to close the sale? Huh? You want the secret of closing the sale? Quit closing the sale. What are you doing? How many people do you know can't wait to be closed? You ever have your friends call up and say, Bill, come here, could you do me a favor? I got a little extra money. I was wondering if you could close me and take all the money away from me. Come on, man. The days of closing the sale are pretty much over. The only people that haven't realized it yet are the people who are still offending customers and losing sales. It might even be you. If you ever get in a sales seminar and you get this big sales trainer guy and he gets up in front of the room and he says, hey, these are the 5 best ways to close a sale. Get out of there. Sure, you can ask a question that confirms the sale, but wouldn't it be more powerful if you understood why the customer wanted to buy from you? Wouldn't it be more powerful if you had such a compelling sales presentation that the customer began to ask you questions about ownership and begin to give you buying signals that you could use in order to be able to either assume the sale or simply confirm the sale halfway through the process? Wouldn't that be better for you? And why aren't you doing that? And why are you spending so much time figuring out how to close the sale when you don't even know the one basic fundamental thing that'll make you 10 times more powerful, how to open the sale?
So you can't make people buy. You can certainly help them buy, to act on a decision they've already made in their mind, but you can't force people to buy. So don't do that. All right. And then, what's 1 Minute Sales Manager from a long time ago, one of the books I read, because it was really short and easy to read. But, if think about what it's like to be the buyer. Think about when you're excited to buy something, or there was a good salesperson, or a person who helped you, right? That's how you want to be as a salesperson, all right? Take away the risk, take away the lack of knowledge, help them through the stress, and people are going to buy from you. And you may not even have to ask them to buy. So what's the best close? It's when the prospect closes themselves. When does that happen? Well, they know what, the need and the opportunity that has to be addressed. They're not willing to accept the status quo any longer. They need to either take action to fix the problem, okay, or pursue the opportunity. They understand the implications of not doing anything. They're comfortable with you and your firm. You've shown integrity, credibility, and competence. You've been able to be the matchmaker between the two organizations. They prefer your solution, right? It's the right fit for their problem or opportunity, and you're the option that gives them the most perceived value. So when those things are in place, people will often say, hey, let's go for it. When can we get it? How are we going to finance it? Just like when you find the car, the furniture, the soulmate that you want, you go for it.
This is Pat Hydrick with Sandler Training, here to talk to you about rule number 5, never answer an unasked question. Now, why would anybody want to answer an unasked question? Well, in sales, salespeople can get a little excited. They can be proud of their product knowledge, their industry expertise. And at the wrong moment, they might suggest something that the prospect never brought up, and it can actually kill the deal. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you've done a good job of uncovering the prospect's problems, frustrations, issues, concerns, and you put together a great presentation, and you're nailing every single point, and the prospect's ready to buy from you? And you might find yourself or somebody else on your team says, hey, did we share with you? And then that's the salesperson's biggest nightmare. What you thought was a slam dunk sale all of a sudden gets derailed, and for whatever reason, that person does not become a client of yours. So don't forget rule number 5, never answer an unasked question.
So when it comes to closing, don't add new information. Stick with what you and the prospect have agreed is the solution to their problem. So let's go over some different closes. The most basic close, especially after getting a strong buying signal, as we heard from the guy from Australia, just ask them to go forward with it. Why don't we go ahead with this? If it was you and the person you wanted to marry, why don't we get married? Okay? Will you marry me? Just ask for the business. All right? What if they say no? Find out why. Okay, what's the issue? What else do you need? Right? Why not? That moves you further along towards the sale. So no is just a request for more information. You can use a summary close. This is probably one of the most popular ones. So before asking somebody to go ahead with it, you just remind them of the benefits that they've agreed to. So you're getting near the end of the process. There's a lot that we can do for each other. You say, hey, we agreed that we can help you increase your foot traffic and sales. We can help you position your brand in your store above your competition. And we've also agreed, right, that we can help you target some different groups. You want to get them saying yes, and you want to warm them up, and then ask them. So it seems like to be a really good fit, why don't we go ahead with it? That's a basic summary close. A very common type of close is an assumptive close. That's where you ask a question that assumes the person has already made a decision and agreed to buy the product. So for our holographic system, we might say, which stores are you going to put the system in first? Now, we haven't asked the person whether or not they're going to go ahead with it. We're just assuming they are, right? And if the idea is if they answer the question, well, gee, I'm going to put them in our stores in New York and LA, that they've just agreed to purchase a system. And a familiar common form of an assumptive close is an alternative close, where you give the person a choice between two alternatives. So would you rather meet on Tuesday or Thursday? Will that be cash or credit? Well, I didn't say I wanted to buy it first. So the problem with these closes is that they are manipulative. And you can use them for small things. People don't really mind too much. And they work because sometimes it's socially awkward to say, no, no, I didn't say I wanted to meet again. And when deep down inside, you probably do. So they're good for pushing the client or the prospect in a certain direction. But you should always be ready for some, pushback if they're offended. And if they're experienced buyers who deal with salespeople all the time, especially in business to business, be very careful using this, right? Because they're going to sniff you out and you may insult them and offend them. And that's not worth it. The no pressure close comes from Sandler, and this is an adaptation of kind of what they do. But the idea is if you work with the client, you go through all the normal steps that you're supposed to do. You find out their problems, you diagnose it, they agree on it, you show them a solution. They have that, you know who the decision maker is, they have the money to pay for it. Everything is done except to ask them to buy, right? What do? You say to them, you're wrapping up maybe your presentation or your proposal, and then you look at them and, say, gee, there's all these good things that our product can do for you, right? We can help you with your foot traffic. We can certainly help you target those different groups you want, women of color and millennials. And certainly, we're going to help you push your brand, higher than your competition. And then you ask, so what do you think the next step should be? So you put the pressure on them to say, I guess we should go ahead with it. You've answered all my problems and given me solutions, so I might as well go ahead with it. I've never used it. I didn't know about it when I was in sales. Not sure I would have used it. But if you have a lot of anxiety about closing, you can put that onto the buyer. And if they come back and say, I want to think it over or something else, you just ask, well, okay, why? What is there to think over? All right. And it helps to, like any close, to surface up any objections or issues that you didn't know about. There's also the puppy dog close. So it's named after, you're walking home or out for a run or a jog and you find some puppy, cute little puppy there right there, and there's nobody around. You just can't leave it because it's going to get hit by a car or, eaten by a coyote around where I live. And so you bring it home and, you put up some signs, some posters, maybe call the police, see, or the animal control officer. And what happens? You end up keeping the puppy because it's so dang cute, right? That you fall in love with. So a puppy dog close is hey, give your product your to the customer and let them use it. Well, I bought a car because the salesman let me drive it for the weekend. And after driving around for the weekend, I didn't want to give it back. So I bought it, right? You just have to be careful. And the biggest thing is the customer, the prospect needs to be able to use the product correctly. They need to be able to experience the benefits. So if it's too complicated, they don't know how to use it, it's potentially dangerous, something bad could happen, it's not a good candidate. Your product's not a good candidate for a puppy dog close. They have to be able to easily experience the benefits. And then once they do, there's a good chance they'll say, dang, this really does work. I want it. So it's a good close when you can use it. There's also the balance sheet close, or I guess back in the day, people called the Ben Franklin close. But the idea is sometimes you have customers are having a tough time making up their mind. I'm not really sure what I should do. I'm trying to weigh the pros and the cons. All right. So what you do is you help them with this. All right. So you talk with them, may take out a piece of paper or use a whiteboard, and you make two columns. All right. And then first you list out, okay, let's go over all the pros. Let's go all the reasons for going ahead with the sale. And you develop as many as you can, segregate, and don't bundle things together, segregate, make all the benefits be separate. And then every time you get one, you just put a check mark. Don't write what it is, how much it's worth, or anything like that. You just want to fill up one column with check marks. And then you say, okay, let's look at the cons. Let's look at the negatives. All right. And then you quiet. You don't help the prospect. You let them develop the negatives. If you have to give one or something like that, that's fine. But you don't want to help them develop a long list. You want obviously a much longer list of checks and the pros than the cons. And then when they're done and you have 10 checks for yes and 3 checks for no, you can say something, well, it looks like there's a lot of positive reasons to go ahead with this. Doesn't it make sense to go ahead now? And the idea is you're helping them make up their mind. Is it a manipulative? A little bit. It depends, on the prospect and how, sharp they are and how much they really understand the product and the issues. Reduce to the ridiculous close. If you've ever noticed, most businesses, whether they're selling to other businesses or consumers, the costs are usually broken down either on an annual basis. This is your monthly lease, your monthly financial charge, your loan, okay, or an annual basis. And the reason they do that is when you look at the whole purchase price, it's a lot of money. If you buy a $200,000 house and you have a mortgage at 5%, you're paying way more than $200,000 over those 30 years. And if you knew how much you're paying when you're making that purchase, you probably wouldn't do it. So to reduce it to the ridiculous close is a way to try to overcome a price difference. All right. That if you just take the full amount and don't break it down into smaller units, seems like a lot, or maybe a lot, and you're going to try to make it seem smaller. All right. So, the way I learned it, it was often used in new car sales. I never worked as a car salesman, but that was kind of the example that I learned it with. I've never used it, but it has legitimate uses. Um, so first of all, let's say a new car costs $25,000, and the person says it's too much money. So you want to find out, first of all, how much too much is it? In other words, how much more is it than they really expected to pay? So you'd ask them something like, how much you think, what would be a fair price for this car? How much do you think this car should sell for? And let's say they say $20,000. So what you're telling me is it's $5,000 too much, right? That's how much too much it is. Yeah. So now we're not talking about a $25,000 car versus a $20,000 car. We're talking about a $5,000 difference. So now we've shrunk that down by 5 times. It's only 1/5 as much. Okay. So now the difference is that $5,000, and if I can get the person to be comfortable with that, I'm going to get the sale. So what do? You keep breaking it down into smaller amounts. All right. So let's say it's going to be a loan, right? And given the interest rates and everything, that $5,000 more purchase price now works out to $90 more per month on a 5-year loan. Right. So now it's only $90 per month. That's a lot different than $5,000. And then there's 30 days on average in the month, so that's only $33 a day. Right? So that $5,000 just became $3 a day, and heck, a cup of coffee costs more than $3 a day, especially if you got a latte or a cappuccino. So basically, you can say, hey, for the price of a cup of coffee, Are you willing to pass on this opportunity to make this purchase? And you've taken the $25,000 figure, oh my God, and reduced it down to $3 a day. Now, does it always work? No. But if the person kind of really wants to buy it, but they're having a hard time with the price, they'll go along with the rationalization. You're giving them a way to reduce it down so they can actually buy what they want. So, in that standpoint, it's not really manipulative because the person really does want to buy it. When you talk to salespeople or watch videos about sales, especially on closing, most salespeople say, they want a yes or a no, not a maybe, not I want to think it over, right? Not a stall or a fluff. Those are objections, right? Where the person, there's something else probably going on, whether they are uncomfortable with the risks, the money, maybe they aren't the decision maker. There's a whole bunch of different things that could be that you don't know about that haven't surfaced. And a common thing to do is to give the salesperson, a stall. I'm going to think about it, or some BS, basically. I mean, I do it all the time when if I'm out shopping and I'm looking at a new big screen TV and a salesperson comes over and they're trying to sell me and stuff, and I ask questions. They go through the stuff, and then they ask me to close, try to close me. I say, I don't know. I have to talk to my wife. And that usually works. They kind of roll their eyes or they walk away, right? So there's a bunch of different things that fall into this category, and so it's really an objection. I need to talk to my boss, my committee, my wife, my partner, or consultant. All right, and if you get that one, the best thing to do is say, "Hey, I understand," and then ask them, "Hey, if you were making a decision by yourself, if I didn't have to talk to my wife, if you didn't have to talk to your boss, if you didn't have to present it to the committee, would you go ahead with it?" All right, and you can position it so like I know you're not making a decision, I know you can't, but if you were the decision maker, would you go ahead with it? And if you've done a good job, they're usually going to say yes, and now you have them on your side. All right. And then, you can ask them, okay, great. When can we go to talk to your boss? You know, they should ask me when I say to my wife, can we call her on the phone? You know, sometimes ask me, when are you going to bring your wife here? And I just give them a non-committal answer, and there's not much they can do, right? And then, and especially in more corporate sales where there's more moving pieces within an organization, you really need a coach, an ally. So you turn this person who maybe can't make the final decision, right? They've been tasked with, making a recommendation. Maybe they hid it from you a little bit because they didn't want to, not seem important or get bypassed. And now you ask them, hey, what do we have to do to get the business? Right? So that's one way to handle it, especially if they kind of say, hey, there's somebody else involved I have to talk to. They're appealing to a higher authority if it was negotiations. So you say, okay, well, if there wasn't a higher authority, would you go with it? Yes, I would. Okay, then, what do we have to do to get this higher authority, these other people to say yes? What are their hot buttons? What's really important to them? When can we see them? When's a good time to see them? How do we, you know, get the product, right? You want it, I want it. So how do we do that? So you get them on your side, and that can be really, really valuable the more complex the organization or the buying situation is. So what do you do if the prospect says, hey, it sounds great, Clay, but I need to think it over? This is the stall. It's really an objection the way we're doing it, but this is the one the salespeople hate the most. You'd rather know, yay, I got the sale, or no, I didn't, because no is just a request for more information. You can say, okay, so, what do we need to do to get the business? What are you unsatisfied with? Why aren't you willing to go forward with our solution? At least you can work with that, and, hopefully you get an opportunity to, make things right so you can get the sale. But here, you know, there's usually some hidden objection, some issue that hasn't come to the surface, and the decision maker, the prospect's not willing to share it right now. So it puts you off. All right. And it's a difficult one to deal with. So how do you deal with it? You have to push the prospect to tell you what it is, to bring it out. And it's not easy, and sometimes can be a little awkward. So when they first say they want to think it over, first of all, you want to act surprised and just kind of pause and look at them a little quizzically, like, wow, I never thought you were going to say that. It seemed like such a good fit, right? You just tried to close them, and then they said, I need to think it over. And you might just want to kind of look at them and say, think it over, all right? And they'll feel obligated to explain it. And if they don't explain it, you need to ask them why. Okay, so what exactly is it that you need to think over? All right, and they may tell you, and you can deal with it then. And whether it's legitimate or not legitimate, it's a misunderstanding or drawback, some type of objection or some new requirement or need that just came up, you go back and take care of it. But if they keep coming back with, no, I just need to think it over. It's a big decision. I wasn't planning on making it. I didn't even know about your company. It's on and stuff. You have to try to get to what the issue is. All right. So there are different ways to start the process. I mean, when I first did sales, it was something like, gee, I must have done something wrong, or, I didn't defend you in any way, right? You just want to get a dialogue going where you can ask questions and they can respond. So you might ask them, so, are you really serious about this product? Because most people, if they're not, they don't want to say no, so they just say they want to think it over. And the person's probably going to say, no, I'm real serious. You could say, hey, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Um, so I'm not sure, what's going on, just to, I can understand, and then ask your first question. But you just want to get to a series of questions where, you ask them, hey, has anything changed about the way you feel about, the way we can help generate the foot traffic that you're looking for in your stores? Are you still good with, the way we can target millennials and women of color so you can get, more of those target groups into your stores? There's not a problem, with using our system, to help elevate your brand, compared to your competition, is there? And then when you've run through this kind of exhausted list of um, benefits that the person has agreed to, and you reminded them, and they haven't said, no, I don't believe in this anymore, then you need to look at them, kind of scratch your head, right? And with a lot of empathy, say, do you mind sharing with me what exactly is the problem? All right. And when you do that and you do it well, a lot of times, they're going to tell you. I'm not sure exactly why it works. Okay. You formed a relationship, you've just reminded them, kind of like, at least on the surface, there is no reason to think it over. Good, 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 good. Why not go ahead? And so you've kind of eroded or taken away, some of their like defense of their position. It's similar to if you have a friend and there's something wrong and you ask them, they go, nothing. Come on, really, you can tell me, nothing's wrong. And then how do you get them to spill the beans? Well, you kind of do this. Well, okay, did something happen at work today? Did you get in an accident with your car? Right? Is your mom okay? Is your wife okay? Is your kids okay? Did you have a run-in with the boss? The customer give you a hard time? I don't know, Bob. What is it? You can tell me. And many times they will. All right. And then you can deal with it because there's some issue or problem holding them back. Okay. Or if it's just the risk, you just reminded them, this is the right decision. And they'll just bite the bullet and say, I'm not really, I might feel like I'm putting my career, up for grabs right now or in your hands, but it's the right move. Now, if they're unwilling to budge, all right, then, at some point you can only push them so far. And if you ask the same question over and over again, they're going to get irritated. So then you say, well, gee, I really don't understand. So okay, how long, are you, is it going to take for you to make a decision? How are you going to make this decision? Get that information, all right, and then say, okay, can I help you with making this decision? And sometimes they might, let you help them to explain some things, but basically find out when they're going to make their decision, and then get in touch with them, at that time, and in the time between when your current meeting and when they're going to make the decision, stay in touch with them through email, social media, whatever the tools that you use to communicate with your prospect. So what do you do if they start to get upset? I said I want to think it over, right? So how do you handle if they start to get agitated, right? Because you don't want to end your conversation on that. So a good thing you can do is just say, hey, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be pushy. You know, you're in control, right? And I'm not trying to force you to do anything you don't want to do. I just thought it was, a really good fit. And I'm just, looking, forward to working with you. And, but, take the time that you need, right? So just back off and just blame yourself and say, hey, it just seems like such a good fit, you dumbass. So why aren't you going ahead with it? But it's okay. I'll wait for you. And that should be enough to mollify them and put things back on track. All right. And again, a little bit of pressure is not a bad thing because they'll have to think about, hey, am I really doing the right thing or am I being an idiot? Right? But that's one of the toughest ones to get over is to get them off the dime. And you'll see some places now, I get emails from things I sign up from salespeople, and they're like, this is the last chance. I won't ever call you again. They won't say ever, but, I'm not going to call you again, so do you really want to let this opportunity pass? Again, a way for me to get out of this, like, well, I'm not going to answer this person. They're just going to email me every month. And when I'm ready or busy or have a good reason, I'll contact them. So people use things like that. Unfortunately, there's not enough time to do negotiation in this class. That's another thing I'd like to teach one of these days. But another close that kind of is really just basic negotiation. I learned as a sharp angle close. That's from Tom Hopkins, going way back. But basically, the idea is if somebody asks you for a favor, whether it's something, whether it's a drawback, but you can go to your boss and get a lower price. You can go to your boss and get whatever they're asking for. Or even if it's a misunderstanding, they think they can't get it and you can give it to them and they ask you for it, right? So this is when people are, trying to negotiate maybe, a no shipping or extra equipment or supplies along with it or extra training. That's a buying signal right there because they're looking for how they're going to do it. You can use this to close the sale. So basically, you say, is that important to you? Yeah, it is. All right. Then you say basically, hey, look, I'll be glad to go to my boss and get that price concession. I think we can get it, but I need a commitment from you that you're going to go ahead with it today. Right? So, I'll scratch your back if you scratch my back. And then, so again, it's just getting in the habit of asking people, hey, is this important to you? And then now, because you're at the closing stage and there's been a buying signal and you're already talking about it, you can use it to close the sale.